Hey everybody, it's Mr. Hauser. Thanks for joining me. Today's video is going to actually be instructions for a potential project. So it's geared more towards parents and caregivers than it is for students, but I promise I'll keep it clean so kids can watch too. The project is going to deal with telling time and building a clock, but in a unique way. And so in first grade, the expectation for telling time is just to tell time to the hour and the half hour, which can be pretty easy to memorize, but it doesn't necessarily lay a strong foundation for telling time. What I've noticed in my experience, both as a teacher as well as a parent, is that some kids learn how to tell time remarkably fast. It comes very quickly to them. Others may take several years to really grasp how to use a clock, and a lot of kids fall in between. What I hope to accomplish by this project is to really address the needs of those who might struggle with it, and also to accelerate an understanding for those who are kind of in the middle. And so they'll have a real strong sense of how to tell time, and so it won't just be settling for telling time to the hour and half hour, but they'll be able to tell time much more than that. So if you've ever been in my classroom, one thing you might have noticed is my clocks that I've created separate the hour and the minute. So that's going to be the base for what we do today. So the reason for this is because these are they're moving at this different paces, because hours and minutes are different time periods. But then the measurements are also different. So you can see on this clock, it goes from 1 to 12. All right, whereas this one goes from 00 all the way up to 59. All right, and it's a complex idea to put them both together right away, and I think can lead to a lot of confusion. So the project today is going to start with them separated into the hour and the minute, but leave the possibility for eventually putting them together so that they can be one clock, because not everybody has clocks like Mr. Hauser that have a ton of whiteout and a broken arm off and a bunch of Sharpie pretty colors there to make that clock. So let's see, in terms of materials, what you'll need, I'm going to use a cereal box in sort of the to remain consistent with Earth Day coming up, so you can do that. It provides a good weight for one, a little bit more strong than just regular paper, but it also gives two bigger spaces. So if you have a cereal box or something like that, and similar, you'll need two bigger open spaces in order to work. Okay. Beyond that, I've got some scissors and glue. I have a marker. I have some construction paper, but if you don't have construction paper, don't worry. Instead of construction paper, you might use another box that's a different color, and I'll show you how to do that. And then the real challenging part is going to be using something that's kind of like a metal brad. You can see these are really helpful, and teachers have them. I have them. A lot of teachers at least have them, but because of classroom use, we use them quite a bit. You may not have them, so there are other alternatives that we could do, and I can show you some of what those might be. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to crack open our box, and we're going to look at these two open spaces. We want a smaller circle here, and then a larger circle here. Okay, now how much smaller? Maybe an inch around. So if you have something to trace, I'm sure you can find a jar or something that's around, a plate that you could trace. I'm going to go ahead and freehand it, and so I want the larger clock, the larger circle on my right side, and then I want my smaller circle on my left side. Okay, so this is going to be my clock that tells the minutes, and this is going to be the clock that tells my hours. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bend my video camera so you can see a little bit more of what we're doing. Okay, so first what I want to do is I want to kind of identify the middle point of it. That's where I'm going to put something that attaches the hands. In terms of building the hands, what I plan to do is just use the edges that I would maybe cut off anyways. Now, for creating the hands, you'll want 2 hands, one for each of the clocks. And it really helps for parents or caregivers, adults, to do the hands for them, both drawing as well as cutting. You want one that's fairly small, and I mean by small, I mean in length. It can be wider, which is good because you don't want it too thin. And that's why I suggest that parents do this, because kids often cut into it and make it a little smaller than usual. And then the other one will be for the minute hand. That should be longer, but it does not have to be any thinner. So we have those, and we can cut those out. And like I said, I suggest parents cut them out. So I'm going to do a very quick job of cutting them out. Kids can decorate them, though. That would be a great opportunity to include them in that step of the project. And certainly coloring them different colors or in a different color scheme allows them to see them, connect them to either the hour or the minute, whichever one that hand is measuring. If I have a blue hand that I'm used to measuring the hour with, well, then when I put them together, it's going to be easier for me to see the blue hand. If I have the polka dotted one that tells me the minutes, well, then it's easier for me when I put these hands together to identify the minutes as with the polka dotted one. So with creating the clock, the reason I have this is because you might want to have kids, write the numbers themselves. And so you could have 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. If you do it on a separate piece of either cardboard or construction paper, that allows kids, if they make a mistake with writing the numbers, then it's not the end of the world. Not that it's the end of the world anyways. Probably shouldn't use that phrase in the time of a pandemic, but it's not that bad. They can just redo it on separate paper. So that's why I'm doing it on a separate paper for now, because to allow for those mistakes to happen. If you have pencil and then marker, that is also a technique that just helps to deal with some of the challenges. So what we'll do is we'll start with 12 at the top. If you just write it, fine, just write it. If you're going to glue it, then glue it. All right. After that, instead of going to 1, 2, and 3, it's probably easiest to put a 6 at the bottom and kind of use the 4 quadrants, like top, bottom, side, left, and right. And so we can space it out a little bit better. Building a clock that's spaced out well is not just a given. You might have all the numbers over here, and then 11 is here, and then it's like, that's not the right way. So if we start with the 4 quadrants, that kind of helps us to build numbers from there. Then we have 2 spaces here for a 1 and a 2. So we'll go ahead and put those in there. We have 2 spaces here for a 4 and a 5. For the sake of sort of speed in this video, I'm not shaping mine. You can see those big rectangles. I might, if I took more time, I might, cut those a little bit and pretty them up a little so that they aren't so crude. But you get the idea when I'm doing this. All right. And so that's going to give us our hour clock. All right. Now, the reason I had you guys make that smaller is because on most clocks, the hour, well, for one, the hour hand is smaller, and so it's able to reach those numbers. If I put it here, it wouldn't necessarily reach the farther end of it. And in most clocks, except for the ones that kind of play around with aesthetics, most clocks have that where the minutes are on the outside and then the bigger numbers are on the inside. And so that is a nice way of connecting the size of the hand with what we have. So if I were able to find a metal brad, I could poke a hole through it, maybe jam something a little different. These are not always that sharp or that strong, so you may consider something else first, and then it goes through both the hand and the box, and then it opens up once you have that. And that allows you to move it this way, okay? Clockwise is certainly something we've practiced in class. If you notice what just happened, you might want to make sure if I had more time, I'd cut these a little bit smaller and glue them down really well so that when this is moving, it doesn't do that. Okay? All right, second step is to create your minute clock. The minute clock is also going to we're going to start with sort of the top and the bottom and build the numbers from there, because that's even harder to space out. And so I'm going to just go ahead and imagine that we don't have construction paper or another box, and we're going to go ahead and just write it. So at the top we can put 0, 0, because that's what clocks have at the top. At the bottom we would put 30, okay, because that's half an hour. And like I said, for first graders, like that's all that's expected, to know this and to know this. But to have a better understanding that helps a foundation, helps build a foundation for telling time. All the other times, I think it's crucial to sort of understand more of what the clock looks like. So we would put 15 over here and 45 over here. All right. And then again, I would space it into 5s. So similar to where you put the, certainly do it in pencil first. Make sure to put 05 and then 10. After 15 is 20 and 25. Then we have 35 and 40. Then we have 50 and 55. I would say the benefit, again, of using the paper in this is so that you can, for this, we didn't have a lot of space. For this, though, if we have little pieces of paper, we can kind of adjust them to fit a little bit better, all right? And so what I would do is I would give some lines, some sort of markers that indicate each group of 5. And the reason why is because in many cases, these are the only numbers that you'll see on a clock, if even these. Usually it's just these. And so this helps to simplify it a little bit. Rather than write all the times, I think what's most helpful is to try and just make dashes in between these numbers. So if you have 0, you want 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you're only making 4 dashes in between each of these. So try and space them out. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. The reason I would suggest not writing in the numbers, number one, is because it gets very hard to see what the numbers are. But also, I think it's helpful for the kids to see that, to actually be able to count on. And so it's a good skill. It's kind of like a number line that has the numbers every 5, and you have to still figure out. And I think over time, they'll be able to, if it's 1 past 5, they'll know it's, oh, that's 6. If it's 1 past 20, oh, they know it's 20, 21. If it's 1 past 35, then you know, oh, it's 36. Where if it's 2 after, if it's 2 after 10, then it's 12. It's a way of kind of counting on that's a little more supportive. Now, once you have this face created, again, you'll take your hand, poke a hole through that, hopefully. Maybe use a pencil first to maybe use scissors first. Next one is a bow and arrow, so if this scissor does not work. Wow, Cheerios, really solid construction. All right, and also for this, all right, just to get it started. Then what we can do is we can push that little brad in there. Get in there, little brad. Put it through the hole in the middle. Open it up as much as we can. These are smaller brads than I thought they were. And so this is going to give us the beginning point of our clock, all right? And what I would suggest is starting with it like this, okay? And indicating that this is the hour. And these are the minutes. All right. So when you have this, one thing that I would include, and this is just to help with noting the time, is I would put 2 dots here in the middle. Now, you as a grown-up probably know what those 2 dots are referring to. It's because when we tell time, we have the 2 dots in the middle that separate the hour from the minute, and it's just sort of a subliminal messaging there that helps them to sort of remember that when they show it. So if I were to tell time, you could tell your kid, let's start easy. Let's go ahead and make 3 o'clock. And so they would go down to the 3, and they would move it up to the 00, and it would be 3 o'clock, okay? If you were to say it's 4:30, you could move it down 4 and 30. Now, one thing to indicate is that this hand is always moving. On a real clock, it's always moving. And so, in fact, when it's 4:30, it's going to be halfway between the 4 and the 5. Okay, and that's a good skill to instill when it's separate, because that sort of gives a new challenge, because it allows you to use this separation to its maximum. So 4:30 isn't going to just be a 4 and a 30, but rather, to be more accurate, it's halfway from the 4 to the between the 4 and the 5. Okay. A quarter of the way would be 4:15. 3/4 of the way would be 4:45, and so forth. You kind of grasp fractions that way as you go. So set it up like this, so that it has, so that you have both clocks together, or both clocks separate. Now, the reason we are I would say the second step is, once you feel like your child is really grasping this, and is able to do, I would start with the hour and half hour just to get it started. Then I would start to indicate, a quarter after and a quarter till. Maybe using those words. It's certainly helpful for them to be familiar with those words, but they may not quite understand fractions as much in terms of the clock. So it may, you may just say 4:15 and 4:45. So move at that development. So first the hour and half hour, then a quarter after and quarter till, and then you can do groups of 5. So 2:05, which would be 2, and then 05. All right, and then eventually get into 2:32, or 2:32, which would use those little dashes along the way. Okay, now the second step of this, after you feel, and it's sort of just up to you when if the kid's just nailing it, getting it right every time, then you can move on to the second step. The second step would be where you cut out this and you move it over here. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like. You want to be careful of your work. That's why we wanted the circles to be different sizes, so that we could take our hour hand and move it over. Once they have mastery of the clock separately, it's just a constructionist way of looking at time. So you're constructing meaning, building on it take the brads. That gives you an extra brad to play around with if you have a brad. If you don't, I would suggest you play around with a paper clip. I know there are different techniques that you could either find on your own or that could be shown on the internet. Now, once you do this, you actually want to glue it down eventually, but it might be fun to just sort of have kids, you know, play around with it at first to make sure that they can line it up. And so, yes, right now you can see that it looks like a regular clock for the most part. That might be saying a little too much. And this spins around, which at first you might think, well, that's silly. We don't need that. But it could be a good way for kids to match up the sort of the 1 through 12 with counting by fives, the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And so it's a good way to match those up, and that's an important thing. But it is something that we want to eventually glue down so that it's not constantly spinning. And then you can tell time with this clock. And so it builds up to this, all right? Lots of steps leading up to just looking at a clock as it is, all right? So give it a try. I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's something that will be something that you try and tackle, but it's up to you. And telling time is something that can come just like lightning, like where all of a sudden your kid's telling time and it really came quickly to them. But it's also one that kids struggle with, and it's really tough to tell who it is. I mean, I've been surprised to see in the past as a teacher who has struggled with it, and kids that may have been able to get, you know, measurement in every other form, or, you know, their spatial awareness was super high, but telling time, it came to they encountered a lot of confusion. So hopefully this helps, and hopefully you have fun with it. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining me. Bye.